Hey everybody, I wanted to do a quick follow-up video to yesterday's crazy math neural networking video, and I'll post the link up top so you can go back and watch that if you want to, where we're testing out kind of the crazy math parameters that I've got set up here that have some interpolation in between the tables where we can't see and try to apply weights to our error graph on here, but the scanner just wasn't working worth a crap. And so I have gone out, I got a 40-minute log on here, and as you can see, I kind of shrunk down my list of parameters. And that's because my cable wasn't long enough, so I've been using Bluetooth. But something I did want to do was kind of go over applying these changes. And so I've got the neural network trainer open up on here. And something to keep in mind, this is technically a VE table. If we close this out and look, we've got a VE max of 100%, which is not true because we have a pressure ratio of 2.1, almost 2.1, which means 15 psi of boost. 14 and a half psi, we should be at close to 200% VE. So I'm not sure what's going on with that side of things, but nonetheless, as we look through some of these, specifically the middle sections of both, you can see we get up to 92, 95. We go to 134 and 10, or maybe it's 144, 97. Where is it? Nope, that's an idle one. So let's go 107, 134. Kind of scrub through some of these, and we'll see the VE gets up to 100% in some places. But once again, 100% to me is not equating to 100% in this case. So, we're seeing 93% at 2.1 pressure ratio, which is impossible. But that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is I want to talk about applying these changes. And so if we go into split screen here, we can see the shape of the VE table and kind of what's going on. And in fact, if we go to the 97 144 table, it's pretty funky, pretty funky. There's some weird shapes being made on here, much like in whenever we're doing virtual VE on a Chevy. And in fact, there's some very unrealistic shapes in here. 107.97, which is a cam angle that's unachievable. These two angles can't be achieved, but you can see that it can still propagate the math for this, and the math is just stupid. So I'm not sure of the shapes that the virtual VE or the neural network stuff will accept versus won't accept. And so we still want to keep that in mind because we know of on whenever we're doing virtual volumetric efficiency, we've got the dome, we've got the S, we've got the bowl, but that's basically it. We've only got so many shapes that the math can represent. It's polynomial math on that side. I'm assuming it's somewhat the same on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and assuming that it is going to change whatever we put in here regardless, we're not going to get the full change that we apply. We see a pretty low section that we've created. In fact, if we look at from kind of this angle, we can see the low section that we've created. And here, what I like to look at is this row over. Okay, so we're going 74 to 66. We've taken a lot out there. And the data lines up 64 to 68, 66 to 69. So we're basically less than 2 there and less than 2 there, or not quite 2. And so we need to take all that kind of into account. Then we've got a clear line here that breaks where the VE inverts and we start running lean. So we want to make sure and preserve kind of that break whenever we're making these adjustments. And so this is where experience comes into play, and doing a lot of stuff over time will inform you. Just like that, I know I can come in here, grab those two cells, and interpolate between the horizontal boundaries. But what I want to do now then is I want to look at this area, and I'm going to probably come down to about here, and I'm going to take some out of it. So I'm going to do 4% at a time, 0.96. And I want to see what that does to the numbers and how they line up. So we're looking at 62, 61, that's about the same. 60, 58, that creates a little bit of a zigzag, so I'm going to smooth that and make sure that I've got kind of a ramp going that way. But now I need to look here because we're too high. I'm going to bring those down another 4% and I'm keeping an eye on the difference between these two areas. So I want to get these numbers here down below those. So we're getting close. If I go one more, there. So now we've got a 2, a 4. So we're about 2 off here. We're about 4 off there. We're 4 off there and 4 off there. So that kind of lines up with how I think that's going to operate. And so we're 2 there, 3 there, 1 there. But you can kind of see how I'm manually blending that in. So I can fill that in and look at moving down. All the numbers are starting to line up. Now we're obviously too big here. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of grab out on this area, and I want to smooth. And I want to smooth a big area. I want to blend over a big area. So I'm going to smooth this both ways. Make sure that the numbers stay sane. And at the same time, I'm looking at what's happening to our chart, because I do see I've got kind of a hard edge here, and that's where the line is drawn. So that's not necessarily wrong. And what I'm going to do here, instead of adding to that necessarily, I'm going to bump that up by interpolating across. And it's a decent step, but some of the math will probably clean that up on its own. But here's where we have more of an issue, because 67 to 67, 64 to 60 to 63, that's not enough. Now, there's a couple ways that I could attack this. I could take this way out and make this a straight line by interpolating it. I don't necessarily think that smoothing between the bounds is going to work, because it's never going to bring this number up above that number. It brought it up, but as you can see, it also brought that one down. We don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of approach this the same way, where we're 4% low there. So I'm going to go 1.05 and add 5% to it. And didn't quite get there, but now I can come in here and smooth out to create that transition. Going up though, I'm less worried about that. I'm just going to interpolate that vertically and then make sure, because now we're sloping down, and that's perfectly fine. That follows the math. Same on that one. This one kind of peaks out a little bit longer but slopes down. But if I wanted to, if I thought I was getting too bumpy there, I would grab the entire thing and smooth the selection. And I don't know if you were able to see that peak there. Let me go back. There's that peak. Kind of smoothing that peak down a little bit. See, we actually took some fuel out there, but that is probably a section of the table that we will never be able to hit, period, unless we're off throttle and we're going to be in DFCO during that, so it's not going to register anyways, or the cam's going to be in a different position. So now looking at this, not the best shape. We've got a point right there at that 78. So we go 71, 78, 76. We can go ahead and go vertical on that, because it's just one cell to smooth that out. And then looking across, that's getting pretty good. As I said, that peak there is not surprising, other than there's not a big shift between that. And then we've got 65 to 70. I'm going to go ahead and blend that like that. That's too much. I kind of want that to be smoother. So I'll hit it once like that. And then maybe I'm going to leave that one as it is. Even with that ridge there, I want to see if we can maintain this area where we needed more fuel. Looking at this, where we're clearly lean in that section, then we go clearly rich. I want to see if we can maintain that ridge down through there, because what we may end up having to do is take this whole section up here and bring it way up in order to make the math not try and pull that ridge back down. And so if we have to, eventually we can come up here and start to flatten this out and then have the dip that we need. So that's just one table done. Let's look at one more. And in fact, let's go to the big one that has a lot of data in it, which is going to be the 134, 106 table. And so we're going to go 134, 106. Let's paste it in here. We'll go a full shift. And surprisingly, this one didn't really do all that much. You can see where it pushed it down, where a lot of it's rich starting at 0.5. And so I'm actually going to undo that one. I'm going to come back in here and look at this and see, okay, 0.5, we're almost 5% rich across the board at 0.5. That's an easy shift. So we'll come in here, 0.5. We'll go 0.95, multiply it. We've taken 5% out. We've created that ridge there, but that ridge isn't necessarily a bad thing, because if we look at our data, 0.4, for lack of a better term, versus the rest is a lot closer. Then we kind of get lean, and based on looking at this data up in here, we're going to be lean in this section, and the rest of it's going to be good. So we're lean up to about 2,400 RPMs and down, and 30 pressure ratio and down. So this area is lean. And looking at it, we're at least 8% lean down in here that kind of tapers off to 6. We know we can add at least 6 in here. So if we go 1.06 and multiply this, it really didn't do anything that you can see. You can see it right there, which we can blend that over. Okay, that's done. And that ridge, not the high ridge, that high ridge doesn't bother me. That low ridge bothers me. And so I'm actually going to try and bring the low ridge up a little bit to blend better into the high ridge. Might have to click it a few times, but that's looking better. Now, the nice thing about virtual volumetric efficiency is we have zones that we can actually see where everything's at. And whenever we're looking at those, let's just do NN2 test. Whenever we're looking at those zones, we know where those breakpoints are for the different shapes that we need to make. On this one, we don't quite have that option. So what I want to do now is open up our neural network trainer. I want to train this. And I want to see what it looks like after we train it. So here's our test one that we just did. And what we're going to do is we're going to open up a new window while this is going on, while it's processing in the background. And I'm going to open up the exact tune file. And we're going to set them basically side by side so we can look at them. So here we've got our Hellcat new NN1, neural network trainer. And this is where we'll open it up to compare to this one. So give this a couple more seconds to process. Today, Junior. Maybe today. We only adjusted 2 tables. I wouldn't think it'd take that long to process, but I want to see the final shape that the neural network trainer comes up with and kind of compare it to the adjustments that we just made to see whether or not they make sense. Because we can do this comparison and tell right away, like, if there's sanity in the results. And so we're going to say, no, we don't want to update the tune. Let's go split window. And we're looking at no, wrong window. There we go. We're looking at 134 and 106. So let's go to 134. That's the wrong table. 134.75 and 106.25. Maybe it isn't. 134.75 and 106.25. Okay, I was wrong. And so this is the new one. This is our new trained table. So we'll try and get those somewhat close together, and you're going to see so after our changes, we're getting up to 84 is our max VE, and it dropped it off a little bit, 83.4. So it dropped our top end down some. But let's look and see where our line was. So we're at 0.4, 0.5 is really the break point. So 0.5 was our break point, and we're 50%. 50, that kind of follows along. But this actually ended up, this area where we were lean, it didn't quite get to where we were wanted because we were seeing 41 there and we got to 37. And in fact, where we are at 46, we're now at 44. So we may have actually caused the 4 pressure ratio row to drop down. In fact, this whole area up here has gotten leaner. And so we've inadvertently caused an issue. And so it's going to actually show up leaner whenever we log this. Does that make any sense to y'all? In fact, the area where we were rich and we dropped the fueling down in here, stayed pretty rich because it has to make the shape make sense. And that's what it boils down to is this hard edge that we were seeing on here actually got pulled down, but in the process of pulling this down, we pulled this up and created the inverse effect of what we're looking for. So, something to be aware of whenever we're adjusting these tables. What was the other one that we adjusted? 107, 134. So if we go to 107, 134, here's our edited table. And here's our new table. So it did recognize, because we did make a big adjustment here and pull this down, it did pull that down, but as you can see, it automatically kind of smoothed over our changes. And so while we're going to be closer with this one, it's going to require a few revisions. So what does that mean? Well, half steps. Half steps are going to make the math easier to process this, so pace by half. And it's going to take more. Now, granted, pasting completely might get a big chunk of that moved in the right direction, kind of like this one did right here. But now that we're here and we're somewhat close to what the other one looked like, I would definitely be doing pace by half on this and manually smoothing it and trying to find some shapes in here. Now, from the looks of this, though, since there isn't zones that give us clear definitions of where these areas are, we have a lot more shapes going on in here. And so there might be some more flexibility. But given whenever we were over on the other table, the 116 or the 125, 106 table, And what table was it? 134, 106. Okay. 134, 106. Given that the way it handled that ridge of pulling up this middle section and actually making it richer than it was before, that's where we're going to have to be more mindful of. We're going up then down, but we also have curves going on both sides, and so it's limiting the shape of this. And there you can actually, if we look going down into this bowl, come on, right click, work with me here. You can see where the bowl kind of peaks out there, or domes out in this section right down here. So, in fact, that 68.902 is right in the middle of it. If we highlight that, that's the low section of that. That section probably would have a hard time going lower. If we were to push that section lower, a lot of times other areas are going to have to compensate. So these might have to come up, and same thing with this. So just keep that stuff in mind when you're going through applying changes on neural network, on virtual VE, things like that. So just a quick tip.